You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Welcome to this episode of the Business of Practice podcast, where we focus on the business and human sides of equine veterinary medicine. In this episode, we're going to talk to Dr. Shadi Ireifej, a board-certified small animal veterinary surgeon and the owner, founder, and chief medical officer at VetTriage, a company that provides telehealth triage services to pet owners all over the world. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Grice, business consultant and former equine practice owner. The Business of Practice podcast is brought to you in 2024 by CareCredit. Dr. Ireifej graduated from the State University of New York at Binghamton, where he received his Bachelor of Science degree in biology in 2001, followed by his DVM degree in 2006 from Cornell University School of Veterinary Medicine. Dr. Ireifej then completed an intensive one-year small animal medicine and surgery rotating internship at Angel Animal Medical Center in Boston, Massachusetts in 2007, followed by 2 intensive one-year small animal surgical internships at Long Island Veterinary Specialists in Plainview, New York. He then completed a rigorous 3-year small animal surgery residency, also at LIVS in 2012, and achieved board certification in small animal surgery. Over the next years, Dr. Ireifej worked at several large specialty small animal hospitals as a surgeon until he launched VetTriage in 2019. An equine platform was introduced on VetTriage in 2023. Welcome, Dr. Ireifej. So glad to have you with us.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
So you have created a fascinating and useful company in VetTriage. I'm so excited to learn about your operations and how you're seeing it help the equine veterinary industry, because God knows we need some help. How did your experiences in veterinary medicine influence your development of even the idea of VetTriage?
When I was in my surgical training, I can't remember if it was a surgical internship or early on in the residency, I had noticed that the receptionists at Long Island Veterinary Specialists were taking 100 calls a day with people asking, should I come in? Is this an emergency? What do you think? And the front desk, of course, are not medically trained. Although they have good intentions, they can't give medical advice. And the folks who can give medical advice, the veterinary technicians and the doctors, they're busy on the floor saving lives. They can't get on every single phone call for people who are inquiring. So I saw this and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you had a business model where doctors answered the phone and triaged? Because back then, this is 2007, probably 2008, video capabilities were not as prominent as they are now, right? And so I thought you can do a phone triage with a veterinarian. So that idea morphed over time, evolved into what we have today. That in combination with all the cultural issues that we have in the veterinary field, where there's imbalances of work life, there's cultural problems in the workplace, the turnover rates, all that stuff that we all have dealt with either directly as owners or indirectly as team members. Those 2 big factors came together, and I said, something like VetTriage would be a solution for this problem. I sort of saw it in advance, thinking this is going to be a problem in the profession in the future. It's going to collapse. And COVID did exactly that. It accelerated the process. We would have probably gotten to the same place that we are now with all the challenges, but the pandemic certainly accelerated that. And we were fortunate enough, I guess, to launch right before the pandemic. And so we thrived from there.
And it's amazing because the pandemic made all of us so incredibly comfortable with remote communication, Zoom, videos. Like everybody's now like, oh, that's so much easier in many ways, right? And so it was serendipitous, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does it function for equine practices? Like, do practices sign up? Do they pay? Who pays? How does the money work? How does it work?
The initial conversation starts with what problem are you trying to solve in your practice? And let's see if VetTriage can fit there. And on the equine side specifically, it's overwhelmingly the after hours on-call emergency services. It's a nightmare for folks. It's a quality of life issue. It's a problem getting people to pay for the services provided after hours. Your staff is coming in the next day exhausted. Most of these equine vets are traveling 45, 60 miles plus one way in the middle of the night with no support staff on hand. And so these factors are stifling. And then if you combine that with the fact that there's a very low number of veterinarians who are equine docs, and a lot of them are retiring now at a rate that's faster than ever before, where it's a massive problem, obviously. So in terms of functionality, our goal with equine, especially, the biggest way we can be of help to them is taking over their after hours, basically an answering service, but with veterinarians live on video following your hospital's protocols. So once we figure out the problem you're trying to solve, and let's say it's equine, and let's say it's after hours emergency, we will then create individual unique hospital protocols so that we are operating as you would operate. And these protocols are in the system internally. We don't share them with clients. Our veterinarians, once your client comes through, our veterinarians can simply push a button. The protocol pops up. We know how your hospital operates during hours, after hours, what species you see, what are your limitations with mileage, will you see non-clients? All these things will be figured out ahead of time. So then we can do our job. Our job is to triage. We don't charge the clinic at all for this service. The clients pay us directly. Non-equine is $50, $75 for equine. That's a live video with a doctor, an equine doctor, as much time as they need on video, plus free follow-up until the clinic is open again. So if we see a horse with mild colic on a Friday night, we give some palliative advice, not an emergency, but then Saturday, the colic is now worse. We want the clients to reach out to us so we can re-triage them, get them called in if needed, at no additional cost to the original $75 fee. Then the clinic will get a copy of the medical records for obvious reasons. They want to attach it to the EMR for that client. And the goal here is to eliminate all those unnecessary phone calls that you're currently getting, that you're not only losing sleep over, that you're not even getting paid for those calls, right? And if we can cut down those calls, which is about 80% plus, that'll be a massive improvement in quality of life for the on-call folks. It makes hiring easier. It improves the turnover rate. It gets your veterinarians longevity so they can start loving this profession again.
So if it is something like that colic got worse and you need somebody to go see it live from the practice, what does that look like?
What'll end up happening is once the doctor on VetTriage confirms that's a true medical emergency, we want to make sure the client approves your emergency fees for after hours. It's within the distance that your clinic is allowing to be seen. Can you handle that level of emergency or not? These are all in your protocols. If all those stipulations are met, we then call the veterinarian on call, not the clients. We do it and say, hey, doc, sorry to wake you. I have this horse with a colic. Here are the details. How would you like to proceed? And the doc can say, okay, I'll tell the client I'll be there in 1 hour, or if it's a facility that requires a haul-in, great, tell the client to meet me at the clinic in 1 hour, whatever it is, however the doctor wants to handle it, we will then arrange the visitation. And all that is start off with actually triaging the patient so that we're not doing what I call convenience call-ins, where just because you want to be seen, but it's not medically indicated, we have to save these vets. They need rest. So no, I understand your concern, but it's not an emergency, which is good news. Here's some palliative advice. Here are signs to look out for. Call your vet next week, after the weekend, with the goal of creating an appointment with them, because it's not an emergency, which is good. And we get to give them peace of mind and advice.
That sounds so amazing. Oh, wow. That does sound good. So what would you say? You're still early in the equine side. But if you think back to when you first started VetTriage, what were some of the most important things you learned?
I knew that going into this, it's a cultural battle that we're fighting. It's decades and decades of veterinarians feeling as though they owe it to their clients and their patients to be on call for them 24/7. Doesn't matter what species. You just felt that inherent guilt and responsibility. And likewise, clients got used to that. And they also got used to it for free. And so it slowly killed our profession. And if you're in the profession long enough, you know that it's not worth it. So I knew early on we were going to fight a cultural battle, and that is probably the number one most difficult thing. And that battle is even more pronounced on the equine side. They really are intimate with their clients, cell phone numbers and all that. And it's just not sustainable. It hasn't been for a while, and it's not going to be sustainable. So that's the biggest challenge that we face, is the cultural aspect to it. After that, the rest of it is common sense, because right? It's a no-brainer, especially when you have veterinarians on 24/7, English speaking and Spanish speaking, any animal type globally. The rest is just the back end where we're making the magic happen. But it's the cultural shift that is the most difficult. Veterinarians are their own worst enemies when it comes to this stuff.
Boy, you got that right.
They're going to complain about their quality of life, and yet you offer solutions. And why are you objecting to the solutions? You've tried the other stuff. You've tried the whole share on call. You've tried emergency hospitals, if they exist in your area. You've tried all these various things. They're not working. Here's a novel concept. And we've known on the non-equine side, it works great. It works great. So anyway, so the cultural aspect is the most challenging, which we knew going in. As a veterinarian, I was very familiar with that.
The Business of Practice podcast is brought to you by CareCredit. CareCredit keeps equine veterinarians at the heart of care by providing horse owners with simple, budget-friendly financing options. By helping to bridge the gap between cost and care, CareCredit supports healthy financial relationships between veterinarians and their clients. Clients have a flexible way to pay over time for all types of care, and practices get paid in 2 business days. It's a payment experience everyone can feel good about.
Yeah, on the equine side, I do think that a lot of decisions of this type are fear-based. What do you think is the most common fear that practice owners have about partnering with VetTriage?
The biggest, there's 2 big fears, I would say. One is they need to trust our doctors. They don't know our doctors. And sure, these are experienced vets, they're seasoned, they're equine doctors, right? But still, you don't know them. You haven't worked with them. So you need to trust our colleagues in the field to make the right decisions within their own experiences. Mm-hmm. It's them. So that's number one. Number 2 is the fear of losing clients or having clients upset at you, because you can imagine it right now. You're an experienced doc, and Miss Smith says, what is this? I've been using you for 20 years. I was able to call and text you anytime I want. And now I have to go through this, and I have to pay for it. And it's not even you, it's some other vet that I don't know. Then the client calls the next day, they complain. Now you've got to deal with it. So they're worried about the lashing out from clients. And it's not that those 2 fears are not unrealistic. They are. However, it's one of those things where I promise you use us, you're never going to go back. You'll be kicking yourself for not having done it sooner, but it does take that leap of faith.
Yeah. So, what you were saying about trusting your doctors brings up something that has been, I moved from the Hudson Valley of New York to Montana. And there's different stuff that goes on. Not that I'm practicing clinically anymore, thank God, but I've never seen a rattlesnake bite. Yep. And people that practice here have maybe never seen a horse with anaplasmosis, which are like, a dime a dozen on an on-call shift, certain times of the year. So how do you deal with that within VetTriage?
So number 1, it starts off with having veterinarians who are seasoned, experienced doctors. They've been doing this for a long time. A lot of them actually have owned and even sold hospitals. So these guys and gals are proficient in what they do. That's number 1. But number 2, alluding to what you're saying, you can't know every single disease, especially if it's region-based. Even within the US, let alone Australia, New England, Italy, right? So we have an internal document hub with educational material that focuses on those conditions that are region specific. And also the coolest thing is I've got 70 something doctors on the platform currently. They can all chat with each other live in our group chats. So they always bounce ideas off each other. And so not only is your client paying for one vet, they're actually paying for up to 70 different opinions depending on the complexity of the case. And that all happens in real time with the client on live video. So we have ways to protect our vets to make sure that they feel comfortable that they're making the right judgment call and not sort of assuming something or forgetting about this regional disease or whatever. We want to make sure that we have a collaborative effort.
That's very cool. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So, what are you finding on the equine side is like the percentage of calls? You had a statistic a few minutes ago, but what percentage get kicked to the actual doctor from the practice?
It's interesting because it is actually region based.
Okay.
So in places that don't have as much access to care, meaning your equine facility is the only game in town, the call-in rate is going to be somewhere around those that are not emergencies are going to be somewhere around the ballpark of 50 to 60%. So a little bit, half to over half will not be actual emergencies. You can sleep. You'll never even know those calls happened. We'll take care of them. However, if you go towards areas that are a bit more populated, they have a higher hospital density, it's about 80% plus that are not emergencies. Because the true emergencies, like the clients who have access to that stuff, they usually, especially equine folks, they're like, their mentality is, I'm just going to go in, or I'm just going to call this emergency hospital and go. So the percentage of call-ins changes depending on region. But so I say on average, maybe 70%, something like that. The 80% plus number originally came from our platform when we first started this, because we've been triaging horses since day one. We just never had a specific equine platform. We did this with the hopes of helping the equine profession in alignment with the American Association of Equine Practitioners, AEP. This is why we dedicate our resources to this. But we've been taking care of horses since the beginning. So anyway, the percentage can be somewhere between 50 and 80% plus, depending on the region you're talking about.
Okay.
And I will add one more thing. It also depends on your hospital. I have hospital partnerships where the clinic is okay seeing what we call convenience call-ins, where the client wants to, even though it's not a medical emergency and they approve the emergency fee and they're within the mileage and all those stipulations are met, we will still see them. We want to make our clients happy. We'll still see them. Okay, if that's what you want, we will do that for you. Most facilities say, no, only true emergencies. Otherwise, don't wake me up. So it's malleable.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. So somewhere the average of 30% of the calls go to the on-call person from the practice.
But also packaged. So you have the history, the signalment, the vet.
Yeah. So you've got, while you're waking up, you're not trying to ask those questions and, your heart's still pounding from the adrenaline that getting woken up by the phone, and you can, and that feeling when your heart's pounding and then you feel kind of nauseous and you're like, and you're trying to get a history while you're feeling this way. Yeah. No fun. 2:30 in the morning.
The impression you've been on call before.
Yeah. When I moved to Montana and they said, so do you want to be on the local fire department? And I was like, no. No. I had enough years with a pager. I'm not doing it anymore. Yep. So you've got 70 veterinarians, and do they all do all species, or do you have equine specialists, or how does that work?
So for the equine platform, those clients will only speak to an equine doctor. And so it's important when they go to create their account on the VetTriage website, they click, is this a horse? They click yes, and that'll get them funneled to our equine doctors. It's interesting because some equine doctors are only equine strictly. Some are more mixed animal. And that mixed animal could be just other large animals, cows, goats, pigs, whatever, or small animal, right?
Right.
However, our doctors who are more small animal based, they tend to be way more flexible, or at least open to the idea of seeing any other animal type. And so they'll see everything from birds to reptiles, pets, etc. On our platform, we've seen everything from fish to ostriches, sea otters, fox. We've seen a bunch of stuff. It's 40 animal types at this point. Counting. So anyway, so we want to make sure that the equine clientele, we're very particular about who they talk to. Talk only to an equine doctor. End of story. Other animal types, we're going to funnel depending on which veterinarians are on with their expertise and what have you. But again, it's all collaborative anyway. If I'm on VetTriage and I see a ferret and I may not know ferrets, I know if I ask a question in the chat, I'm going to get 3 different answers right away from other doctors on the platform who want to help me with the ferret. So another
So
point.
that actually leads me to a suggestion for your VetTriage business, which is a lateral diversification into allowing a veterinarian who's called out to see some species. Like sometimes, you've never seen a cria, or there's a pot-bellied pig, and suddenly you're like, that would be a cool lateral diversification, because if it came in after hours, you're not calling your friend. You're
Right.
kind of going, oh shit.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So actually, to your point, we haven't, we've been sort of slowly announcing this, but we are working on a vet to vet platform, or rather it's ready to be launched. We're just sort of polishing it up a bit more, but we want to have a situation, I think similar to what you're alluding to, which is if you're a veterinarian on the field and you're dealing with a case that you're just not familiar with, and you want to phone a friend, we're your friend. We can do that.
Right.
And that cost can still be passed on to the client so that you're not spending your own money on this. It's a teleconsulting is what that would be. And our vet will be the ones who are the experienced docs, whether it be that case in particular or that species, whatever it is. It's a vet to vet interaction. And so we actually already have that built and ready to roll. We're just waiting on some other things to
and
announce.
Maybe it would be even available as like a subscription to a practice who maybe has hired some, younger new graduates, or, like a subscription rather than a one-off.
Absolutely. In fact, I want to see it where it's part of what your, what do you call them? Part of your benefits.
Yeah.
You talk about continuing education, sick days, vacation days, also VetTriage credits, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. Right.
So every month we give you 5 VetTriage credits that you can use as part of your package for being a team member here. And it's our willingness to show that we want to make sure you're mentored appropriately. I can't always be around as the owner, but you have VetTriage and we trust them and they're great. And so absolutely, Doc, 100%.
Yeah. I'll bet some of our listeners are listening here and going, how can I be one of those doctors? How do you recruit? How do you hire?
So a couple of points of recruiting. We've been very fortunate in that we've never really had to seek out veterinarians. They started coming to us day one with resumes. The second we existed, veterinarians were looking for online work, apparently. I had no idea. I thought it'd be a challenge, and it has not been a challenge, which is unlike brick and mortar, unfortunately, who are struggling to find veterinarians. So we've been very fortunate. I have 200 plus resumes waiting for work, and I hire based on our need. And of course, that also allows me to be very selective of the vets that I hire. They need to be experienced, empathetic. They have to be able to reach across the video and convey emotion, which is not always easy for everybody, even if you're a great doctor. So I have to make sure that they check off all of our boxes. After that, I also make sure that they're not coming from any of our partners. We're not looking to scalp your veterinarians. It's hard enough for you to hire them and retain them, let alone being worried that we may come in and swoop. And that's not our goal here. So when that does happen, I bring it up to the applicant and say, I'm only going to have this conversation with you if you tell me that your current employer knows you're pursuing this. Because we're not here to do that. It's very enticing to work for us, but we want you on the ground, and that we know that partner clinic, they need you, right? And so we make sure that we're not messing, getting messy with that. Otherwise, the vets send me the resume. We set up a video call. I don't like calling it an interview because a lot of these doctors are more experienced than I am. And so we chat. And if the vibe is right, we then have them train on board. And then I meet with them again for a Q&A session to make sure they're clear on the protocol, the technology, all that stuff. And then they're good to go. They can put themselves on the calendar, take whatever shifts they want to make it fit their own personal and professional lifestyles.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see there are veterinarians who get injured who are primary caregivers or primary earners for their families. I've known several of them that were, had horse accidents and they're out for 6 months and they really, really can't do physical work.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, what an opportunity if they were able to do something like that.
Yeah, the reasons why folks want to join us, it goes beyond just they want to be part of something that's cool and trendy
Mhm.
and hot right now. Some of them have disabilities, some are new
Yeah.
parents, some are touring Europe and wanted to have some access to make some money on the side, right?
Yeah.
Some people are just like burnt out, or they need a sort of a mental break from all of this.
Mhm.
Many reasons that they'll join us, and if we can help out with that, why not?
Mhm. It sounds like a, wonderful opportunity in certain circumstances for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Um, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today about the platform that they should know?
Absolutely. So I mentioned already, it's free for partnership. We have no contracts or agreements, and we're going to tailor everything to your liking. We also do find that if you're worried about those clients who are going to object to this partnership, if you announce it a week or two in advance to your clientele, you will get an overwhelmingly positive response from people who will see this and say, "Oh my God, that's so cool. That's great. Yes, your team does need rest. I will definitely use this service." The ones who are going to gripe about it are going to gripe regardless of what you think. And that's okay. In this day and age, keeping clients that are just a source of toxicity in your facility anymore can no longer be tolerated. So my final message would be, I urge you to help us change the culture in this profession, or else there will not be a profession anymore. It's so dire with these numbers. Like I gave the webinar for AAP, those numbers are staggering, and it's not sustainable. So fight the urge to be the veterinarian who doesn't like change. We've always done it this way. My client's going to be upset. They need me. Scrap all of that and say, you know what? We need to have a work-life balance. For me, for my team, for future veterinarians, let's jump in.
Yeah, and I love what you say about that, tell them a week ahead of time. Um, Way back, Dr. Andy Clark actually taught me about 3 customer service messages that you should always, these are the rules. The first is don't surprise them.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
second is don't confuse them. And the third one is don't make them call back a second time to get their problem solved. And, so a week before, you let them know what's going on. You explain
Mhm.
why, start with why, and you tell them how it's going to work.
We even have
So
scripts for this. You can
yeah.
actually borrow our scripts and modify them to your heart's content, for social media, for your email
Mhm.
auto responses, your voicemails, your front desk staff to help educate clients. If you're giving them discharge instructions, or medical records, you could have in there the VetTriage flyer. This is for after hours. Use them if you need them. And so we want to make sure that all that material, it can be given to you, and you can customize it, use it, not use it, whatever you want. But exactly to your point.
Right. That's great. Gosh, I really appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Ireifej. It's been great having you on here. And thank you all for listening to the Business of Practice podcast, and a great big thanks to our sponsor. And to all my listeners out there, be brave, embrace change.